This is the first narrated PowerPoint for our fourth module on Roots of Reform. At this point, you should have a copy of Roots of Reform that can be picked up at the Welch Center office in the Julia Roberts building on the Goucher campus. You should also have downloaded the Roots of Reform overview, which is a much smaller document that gives all of the key points included in Roots of Reform. The other thing you should do is download and carefully read Follow-Up 2. Follow-Up 2 includes information from both Roots of Reform and the Every Student Succeeds Act. And you will be asked in Roots of Reform to reflect upon your knowledge of both of these documents, as well as some other resources. So let's begin this overview of Roots of Reform. The purpose of Roots of Reform is to provide educators with background understanding of the reform movement in education and the assumptions that have driven reform. In this document, the authors state that the reform movement in education needs to be reorganized because in education reform, assumptions have been treated like aphorisms, and we will go over the definitions of assumption and aphorism in the next slide. The authors also state that the failure of school reform movements is due to a lack of imagination. The author's primary concern with school reform is focused on least served or underserved student populations, children living in poverty, children of color, children whose first language is not English. And finally, in this document, the vision for meaningful reform will come from focusing on the needs of children and youth, not by preparing students to solve society's problems. But if school reform does focus on the needs of children and youth, then the quality of their education will be such that they will be able to solve society's problems. They will have the skill set necessary. So two important definitions are aphorism and assumption. The definition for aphorism is found on page 2 in Roots of Reform, and there is a significant discussion of that definition. But an aphorism is a concise statement of a principle, a terse, that is, brief formulation of a truth. However, an assumption is the supposition that something is true, a fact or statement taken for granted. What the authors question throughout Roots of Reform is what happens when an assumption is treated like an aphorism. And what you will be asked to consider in Follow-Up 2 is what assumptions underlie certain reforms. For example, in 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act was passed, and you'll be looking at that document in detail next week. But as you go through Roots of Reform, consider what assumptions are made when the Every Student Succeeds Act was put into play. This slide shows the structure of Roots of Reform. The document includes these concepts. There are 3 contexts that will be discussed: the political context of schooling, the social contexts of schooling, and the structural contexts of schooling. Also discussed is the individual within the school and school processes. So, in the second narrated PowerPoint, we will be looking at the political context of schooling. This concludes the overview for Roots of Reform. At this point, if you have not gotten your copy of Roots of Reform, the overview of Roots of Reform, and follow-up 2, you should do so before we begin the second narrated PowerPoint.